This is the Dreadful Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're watching Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Episode 9, Sing, Sing, Sing.
I will not have this from you, from anyone. My whole life, I've been disappointing people. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in Santa Muerte. I don't join the union. I join the force. I'm not Chicano enough. I'm not white enough. I'm not Catholic enough. I'm not cop enough. I'm not anything enough. But what I am is Tiago Vega. And the woman I love sits here. You can turn your backs. You can walk away right now. But this is who I am.
Jesus, you should have been a priest. I love you, Tiago, but you drive me mad all the time.
He's a Vega.
Welcome back, fellow Penny Faithful. We're talking about the penultimate episode of Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Episode 9, Sing, Sing, Sing. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Dreadfuls and Penny Faithful. We are, yes, back for, dare I say it, Sing, Sing, Sing. I am one of your other hosts, John. Unfortunately, this week, Chris cannot be here to join us. Other things are pressing for him. Or is it because we have banned him? Because this has a lot of singing in it, and we do realize that Chris's singing does make ears bleed and glassware crash and break across the world when he goes into his usual renditions. You'll have to figure that one out. Dare I say it, it is the former. But is it the latter?
Yeah, we didn't want to inflict singing on anybody from Chris. No, it's not that reason. Unfortunately, just other things have taken precedence this week for this episode. I know that we're hopefully going to get him on for a quick chat in our feedback section. We'll hopefully record that later in the week and put it into the episode later on. But it's just myself and John here talking about this episode. I suppose we should start off by saying that this episode did come with a warning from Showtime, given that everything that is going on in the US, the moment at the end of this episode is probably quite distressing for a lot of people. Certainly was watching it myself and John when we watched the episode. It's certainly a distressing end to the episode. So we understand if this episode may have been very difficult for everybody to watch, given the subject matter. But as always, this show is challenging and it has been challenging throughout the series and some of the topics it's discussed and some of the things it's shown on screen. So it's not out of character for the show to push things this far in what it's dealing with in the real life situation that was going on at the time. And the situation it's referencing, as John Logan has said, it is a parallel to what's going on at the moment in the world. So yeah, I understand that people may have found this episode quite difficult to watch.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the thing is that lynchings happened to people, mainly people of color, and it can be traced back to a whole range of racist, violent people, of which that can also come from the police force, as we're seeing. So I think it is one of those things that is both timely in its depiction, given what's happening in the US, and also it is a sensitive issue because it does conjure up fairly bad images of times past. But I think we, in the same way as maybe the whole thing of whether it is pulling down statues or contextualizing statues, this is contextualizing what happened. And in some ways, the legacy of these actions all compiled together to provide, that root and branch of systemic racism and violence, I suppose, towards people that don't conform, whoever that may be.
Absolutely.
So, it is.
Yeah, and sadly not too far in history, unfortunately, as well. So
again, it's another challenging one, and that is a great thing coming from Penny Dreadful. As Derek said, John Logan did say that it was addressing the current state of affairs by looking to the past. If we cannot learn from history our mistakes of the past, then yes, we probably are doomed. But I think with that prophetic announcement from myself, I think we should get into our spoiler-filled review of the City of Angels penultimate episode, episode 9, Sing, Sing, Sing.
I love that that this episode is called Sing, Sing, Sing. John gets a lot of, we call it sick in Ireland, for his Liverpudlian pronunciations of words that end with G, but he gets stick from everybody really, because the Liverpudlian accent kind of has that side of it where you will instantly know that somebody's from Liverpool when they pronounce the word sing that way.
Yeah, I also get a lot of stick from my friends in the south of England that I went to university with, because of how I pronounce how I say air or hair. I obviously don't say it like that because I'm putting that on, but yes, I kind of go her and because I come from the north.
Yes, absolutely.
Part
of your past, John. Part of your past.
Exactly. Okay. I come from the north, king in the north, and all that stuff.
Well, king in the north, yes. King. Right, well.
Excellent stuff.
Right, let's get into the episode itself. As normal, we'll discuss the episode. There was a lot of joy in this episode as well, I must say.
Absolutely.
Something really interesting about the Vega family all coming together in this episode that really, really enjoyed. But the episode itself was directed by Daniel Attias. He's been directing since the mid-80s. He directed right back to Miami Vice, but he's really been involved in almost every single show that you could think of. Any American show, pick an episode he's probably directed, or pick a show he's probably directed. He's been nominated for the Directors Guild of America Award for TV direction, for The Sopranos, for 6 Feet Under, for Homeland. He won for his episode of The Wire, which was in season 5, a great season of The Wire. The Wire was one of those wonderful shows that really built and got better and better with each season. And knowing that he was there from, I think he directed 4 episodes, one from from 4 of the seasons, obviously 4 episodes. But for the 5th season, he won his award for direction on TV, which is really cool. You can really tell there's a style to him in this episode. We have spoken about him before. He directed an episode of The Boys, John, episode 7.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You'll remember the episode because it had a very uncomfortable scene with the Deep.
Yes, I think it was a date with a very abusive woman who liked to touch his gills, shall we say.
Yeah, very difficult episode as well.
It was.
But a great episode as well. A great job by Daniel Attias in this episode. We did mention it before. John Logan has written most episodes of all of the show, and he has returned for probably the final 2 episodes. He usually likes to round out the show with his personal touch on it. So this is a John Logan written episode, and I think you can tell as well, like I have loved the last few episodes, but the dialogue just sparkles in the hands of John Logan. Some of the conversations that people have with each other in this episode, really you can feel the imprint of John Logan, how he writes his characters and how he writes the dialogue between the characters. And this was a big episode for many reasons.
Absolutely. I think as well, this whole episode had just a crescendo. It really felt like music, and music played a big part of it, but there was an absolute crescendo of beats, just gradually building up to that whole Crimson Cat scene with the Vega family that just was magnificent. I really, really, really enjoyed this episode. And I think in between there was just some lovely moments between people, whether it was from Hergos and Lewis Michner to just a small one between Elsa and Maria, to that fabulous cameo of Brian Dennehy coming in as Jerome Townsend, father to Charlton Townsend, Councilman Townsend. All really, really interesting, and just really good. So yeah, I can't wait to get into this episode.
Absolutely. Well, John, do you want to tell everybody what they gave us with the synopsis for this week's episode? Episode 9, Sing, Sing, Sing.
Sure. In danger, Tiago and Lewis must make bold decisions. Lewis heads to confront Herr Goss and must reconnect with the mob boss Benny Berman to protect Dottie and Brian Koenig. With Townsend at the end of his rope, he is forced to turn to his own last resort, his tough father Jerome Townsend. Spurred by Elsa, Peter decides to take Tom, Trevor and Frank to the movies to see Robin Hood. Meanwhile, Maria convinces Raoul to take her on a mother-son date to the Crimson Cat, while Lewis oversees the prison transfer of Diego Lopez to San Quentin. Tiago and Molly also go dancing, where the Vega family converge and confront their demons to the sounds of arguments, love, laughter, and reconciliation, just as the transfer of Diego goes horribly wrong for Detective Lewis Michner.
Yes, it does, yeah. Tough end to the episode, but as you say, how stylistically this episode was put together is just wonderful, right the way through, from the arguments that are going on between the Vega family with dancing and everything that's going on, and then that being intercut with this gruesome moment at the end of the episode is masterfully done by the director and writer here.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting, penultimate episode where there's an awful lot of nastiness going on, and okay, that still underlies a lot of what's going on in this episode for sure. Whether it's Kurt going to Dottie's house, whether it's Councilman Townsend meeting, effectively almost being interviewed by his father in a very estranged way.
Yeah.
There is the dark undercurrent through this, but I think it's really interesting that this penultimate episode had such a crescendo of happiness, reconciliation of the Vega family, and you were kind of just like punching the air going, yes, this is so good to see them enjoying themselves. And then immediately it's stamped on with potentially what is to come because of what happens to Diego with his transfer to San Quentin and the lynching. So the positivity of the Vega family is kind of wiped out with what is to come. I mean, I think there's even a great line that's mentioned that, tonight we will, we put this past behind us. We enjoy ourselves. And unfortunately, I suspect that the actions of the LAPD, will, cause that rift to reopen, with the Vega family.
Absolutely.
But I hope not.
Yeah, absolutely. As usual, with the way we do our podcast, we choose a format for how we do our podcast for all of the episodes. And of course, as we get towards the end of the series, our format always breaks. This time, because we have no Chris and there's lots to talk about, so choosing one big moment is going to be a bit difficult here. But we will kind of stick to that. We'll play around with it a little bit. Hey, you just want to hear us talk about a wonderful episode of TV, so I'm sure you guys don't mind.
No, absolutely.
John, do you want to kick us off with your big moment for the episode?
Sure. It's the lion and the cockroaches. It's Lewis confronting Goss at the private club after the attack on him and Tiago.
So good. Yeah.
I love the fact that you really see Lewis fired up. He's angry here. He says to Tiago, "You ain't seen what I can do." And the whole thing reeks of Nazis. I like the fact that they play out the different scenarios of who it could or couldn't be.
It's a good idea, wasn't it? Because I think that was the big question that everybody had after the last episode, because you just weren't sure whether, after seeing Kurt in the episode, you weren't sure whether he would have been the one responsible. But he's not the only Nazi in town either, so they could have hired somebody else to get the Tommy gun out. But I love, as you say, both detectives talking to each other and kind of marking everybody off their mind list of who could be involved. It was really smart.
And I just like those little additional details that, the V12 car that he's got has been absolutely banjaxed. It's ruined. And, it's almost the fact that, he has been injured, but his concern is the fact that he's now going to have to try and get another car, and it's not going to be the V12 version, because of what he had to do to get that.
Exactly.
And
so
I love that.
Favors
exactly. I kind of really like that. But for me, this confrontation between Lewis and Goss, at the private club was just great. Two men of stature in different ways, both trading blows against one another. You have this this stature of Goss, who believe, he's a professional architect. He effectively runs the Nazi espionage bureau to some extent, or interests within LA.
Yeah.
He's got people working for him. He's very confident man, very wealthy. All of these things. And I love, he talks in that way about Lewis coming into the lion den. And, he should be wary not to kind of poke that sleeping lion. And at the other side of it, you have Lewis, who is this proud, Jewish man who is angry because of the murder of his two friends, but also with what just happened to him and Tiago, that attack on him. And he knows that he's got other people that he's having to protect. So he's fired up, he's angry.
I love the confidence of him as he walks into that room as well. Like, they do reference the racism that's there, where he walks in there and is told this is a club that he isn't allowed into because it's a members only club kind of thing. I love his response to it, just going, well, yeah, my rabbi told me that. So he's instantly going in there and going, I know I don't belong here. I know people like me are shunned from this place. You keep us all out, but I'm going to walk right in here, say what I need to say before I get thrown out by these people. I think that's just a really good impression of the kind of person Lewis is. I think that's really good.
Is, you have Lewis absolutely determined, in this moment. I mean, even just that putting of the gun down in front of Goss, goading him to shoot him, to get it over and done with, because if he doesn't, he will come after him.
Yeah.
And, but Goss equally confident in his own position, despite those threats, from Lewis. And I love this trading of blows of the information that they have against one another, that they're using to try and put each other off kilter. Lewis talks, about knowing Goss, who he's working for effectively, who he's been meeting, and all of this. And yet, Goss comes back and counter trades with this whole knowledge of Brian. And importantly, then, Lewis's estranged families. This is the first inkling that we realize that Lewis has got other family members still alive in the form of his son and daughters, who now are having grandchildren. There is that moment where Goss says, "You're going to be a grandfather." But again, and it's really the semantics of this wordplay. I just thought was really, really good.
And it feels even more threatening when he's saying to him, I know you're estranged from your son and your daughter, and you haven't really met your grandkids. But the kind of extra layer to it when Goss says, your daughter's pregnant again, you're going to be a grandfather again, that extra layer of threat to it, that not only does he know all this stuff from paper, he may have recently seen Lewis's daughter. He may have been very recently monitoring her actions. He may currently have somebody who's watching everything she does in case things go wrong with Lewis. And the threat is there that he's going to kill them, not kill Lewis. So it was an interesting play. The idea that he'd come into him going, don't kill any of my friends, kill me. But that's not Goss. Goss is absolutely going after all of your family, not after you. Yeah.
And the whole thing, we're roaches. The harder you stamp, the more we crawl to the corners. Great kind of sort of image of that. And the parting line is from Lewis to Goss, it's not the lions you have to worry about, it's us roaches. Just to really say that, we've got your number up here. Yeah. We know who you are. We know what you're doing, but we still need to get to you. And so I really like this. And I think, these bold decisions that he's got to make now. So he knows that, Goss, knows Brian is being hidden. And so Lewis's immediate thing is to head back to, Benny Berman, the Jewish, mob boss, to get, protection for both Dottie and Brian.
Yeah.
And I love that we have this just in time moment here, as we have Kurt lurking, around Dottie's home, ready, I think probably just to assassinate her and to take Brian back. Because I think Goss mentions about cracking his nut to get that information out. So Brian certainly would have been in for a bit of sort of pain, I think, to get the information.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But I like that we have this moment where I'm glad Dottie didn't get assassinated by Kurt. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely.
I'm glad there was this just-in-time moment with them getting whisked away to a mob safe house. That scene was so incredibly tense for me because I was just waiting for Dottie to be killed, and maybe even Brian. Who knows? I think the other important thing from this scene was just that Dottie is told by Brian that he's figured out the rocket and is now working on something much bigger, which seems very ominous,
it really
to be honest.
Does. And he's so nonchalant about it as well. He's kind of like, oh yeah, that old rocket thing that all the Nazis want the information from before. I figured that out ages ago. I'm working on something else now, kind of thing. It's really, I don't think he understands, even though he's in hiding and even though he's been with the Nazis, I don't think he understands how much threat he's under, or how much they want him and how bad these people are that are after him. You know, just after he says that is when you see Kurt outside with a gun pointed in the window at the two of them. So you kind of go, he probably doesn't know the imminent threat that's there. He seems so dismissive of that little old rocket issue that has sent him into hiding, you know?
Yeah.
So it is also quite intriguing. Kurt's right outside the door when this new safety net is brought to kind of collect Brian and bring him off to this new safe place. But it's not going to be safe at all now because Kurt's right outside the door. So all he has to do is just follow the car and find out where Brian's going to, right? So not going to be safe.
Not necessarily, no, absolutely. But it could have protection, dare I say it. A bit more so than Dottie's place. So, although Dottie is fierce by absolutely anyone's definition.
Very true.
She certainly knows how to wire a bomb and do a bit of gun running.
Certainly.
So she's a fierce lady. But I think, I just like that. Again, it's a little nod because we kind of knew that Kurt was tailing Brian and Dottie and Lewis. So we knew that they had information on them. So I'm glad that got played out. I think
it's good to see Betty Berman back as well, the head of the Jewish mob.
Definitely.
I liked the kind of layering in here. Again, it's another historical touch there where you effectively have a big mob boss who's buying a house in Beverly Hills among all the stars, effectively. You know, does it make me look nouveau riche? He asks, he asks Lewis, and Lewis is going to, hell yeah, absolutely. It makes you look exactly like everybody else who lives in these hills.
And he's worried about interior decoration as well. You know, he's like, don't hang that chandelier until I'm back, which is, I think that's really, really good. It's a nice trope, actually.
It is.
I think on the theme of lion and cockroaches, I think there's two other little sort of conversations that I kind of want to draw up. One I have to bring up is the meeting between Townsend and his father, Jerome, played by the late Brian Dennehy, Jerome Townsend. I thought this was fabulous. I really liked how, you know, he has to make a booking to see his father, and then it's almost conducted like an interview.
He only has 10 minutes, you know.
Only 10 minutes. But also just how awful it is for Johnathan Townsend that his dad is like that. You know, effectively, Townsend has gone there. He tries not to go and use his father for leverage. He wants to presumably make it on his own. But he needs his influence to change the vote and the decision on the city council from Councillor Beck's route of the freeway to back to his and to prevent his recall. And I love the fact that we kind of get a little potted history of LA about you know, there are three people who built LA. There was Mulholland who brought the water, Donny who found the oil, and you built the roads. And this is an extension of the family. Look what I'm doing. And his father's retort is, that's going to happen anyway. The future is aviation.
Yeah.
I'm investing in the airport.
We'll be flying over your little roads of passengers.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, just so sort of, it just cuts into Charlton, and then ultimately, the reason for his dad not to support him is just dreadful. And it, in that moment, however obnoxious Townsend is, I mean, that opening scene with him and Alex, where he's hating on everyone because of the situation he's in, and it's all becoming so tenuous for him. His nasty side is coming out against the Mexicans, about the liberal, everyone.
Yeah.
But in that moment where his father Jerome says, the reason I'm not supporting you is not because you're a fat, ugly queer, which is worse in itself. He goes, it's because you are weak. I don't back a losing horse. It's just completely dysfunctional and awful. And, that happens. And in that moment, you go, does Townsend deserve this horrendous kind of father? And probably not. And probably is part of the reason why he is, in nature versus nurture kind of thing. His dad probably holds those views himself. So, but despite that, he's a gambler.
Yeah.
He backs the winning horse, but as I say, it was both fabulous and awful at the same time.
Exactly.
So well acted.
Exactly. And I do think it was a bit of a surprise. Part of me wants to kind of tie this up into kind of an overarching thing that was happening in this episode. I kind of meant to mention it last week as well, just about Magda's characters losing control now of their charges. What we're seeing in the episode here is that opening scene with Townsend is basically him going, Magda is there as Alex, trying to control him and trying to get her plan to kick off racism in LA and these race against race attacks by getting his plan of that motorway built through the Mexican neighborhood, firing them up so they will attack the other races in the city. She talked about back at the start of the season that this is the first road that will be built. The next one will go through the areas that the blacks live in and disrupt all of their settings and start them on their plan. But by the end of the season here, what we're seeing is Charlton's losing that. He's not the right horse for her to have backed, for Alex to have backed.
No, absolutely.
So she pushes him to go to his father for his endorsement so that he can get the road back on track again, and his father doesn't do it. So what you feel at the end of the episode, just purely from this Magda idea, what you feel at the end of the episode is she's chosen another wrong person here. In the same way we talked about last week with Peter being the wrong person because she's trying to convince him to take up the Nazi ideals into America and take up this idea of a pure white race in America. And he's saying, that's not what I want. What I want people to do is believe that Germany's a great country and America's a great country and we should work together and we can be great countries. And she was trying to convince him as Elsa to take up much more of the Nazi Hitler ideals.
Yeah.
And he said no. So you're kind of thinking, oh well, Alex, you've Magda, you've also chosen another wrong horse with Peter. Now you've chosen a wrong horse with Townsend. And the other one we'll talk about a little bit later in this discussion. But the other one is Mateo. Like, Mateo is the choice of Rio to lead the Pachucos. She's separating away from his family. In this episode, you see him coming back together with all of his family. So has she also picked the wrong choice there with Mateo? Now that he's got the support of the family, which was part of what she was trying to do in her manipulations of Mateo, was pull him away from his family.
She's underestimated his love for his family, despite everything. You're right, we'll get to it there later, but the speech that he gives to everyone about finding their pride is just so well done. And the interjection then of Tiago, maybe that is Santa Muerto working in mysterious ways, that he is like, putting his foot down because he seems to be the person that's always the strong one, and yet he's has a very different view of how people treat him. But yeah, we'll come to that.
But what do you think about the idea of the Magdas themselves, the 3 or 4 Magdas that we have, maybe have picked the wrong people to influence because they're not as influential as you would expect from the idea that you've got Townsend, who's the son of the person, one of the 3 people that built LA. You've got Craft, who is the son of the person that created all of the weapons for the German armies for 400 years, and he doesn't seem to want to go along with her pressure. And you've got Mateo, who's supposed to be this guy that his family shunned, and he becomes the leader of the Pachucos, who's actually gone back to his family. So does that feel like something that they're setting up? The plan is unraveling for Magda right in front of her eyes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, dare I say it, in that moment, you can trust the LAPD to ride in and effectively put it all back on track, probably with what happens. So, you know, there is talk about having a huge, riot and creating social unrest to again realign the stars of how people are feeling, how people are being perceived. And I suspect the lynching of Diego by the LAPD officers right in the middle of the Mexican community is going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think before we kind of go into that any further on your point, Derek, I think the only other one is just there's that real great, again, mini confrontation between Elsa and Maria at the Craft family house.
That's great.
Where they're trying to sort of settle down after the events of the last episode, and you know, maybe we take Tom to Robin Hood. You know, Peter saying maybe it was unfair to bring you, Elsa, and Frank in as soon as I did after Linda was put into the sanitarium. We have this moment where Elsa knocks over her orange juice and asks Maria to come and wipe it up. And just that confrontation where Elsa says, "What do you think of me? Do you think I'm silly?" And Maria's like, "No, I don't. But I'll tell you when I know." And she goes, "I hope we could be friends. I wanted us to be friends." And she just goes, "You may as well howl at the moon."
Like a coyote.
Like a coyote, yeah. It is just such a nice put down from Maria. And of course, Elsa just simply turns to make sure you wipe everything up and walks off. But, you know, it's nice because I think these 2 characters are just, I love their digs at one another. Like they know, but it's kind of like the truce. Yeah. It's like a proxy war going on. You know, it's the Cold War, and here they are facing one another, but the action is happening elsewhere that Elsa wants to tap into here, and in linking herself to Craft. But as you say, that could all be unraveling. So I kind of, this feels like a war by proxy happening a bit here.
I guess,
and these are the 2 superpowers, Magda in the form of Elsa, and Maria here. And I think it's really nice.
It's really cool, isn't it? Yeah. But I wonder, is the show asking too much of the audience sometimes in these scenes? Because we, as the audience, obviously, we see Natalie Dormer, right? We see her on screen and we see her playing all these characters, and we can instantly go, that's Natalie Dormer there, and that's her in a different hairstyle there, and that's her in different makeup. And there's a question that's been outstanding now for 4 episodes, I think, or 3 episodes now, where you're going, there's Maria. She's standing in front of the actress Natalie Dormer playing Elsa, and she's also been in front of Rio, played by Natalie Dormer, and she's also had Magda visit her, played by Natalie Dormer. And why is she not seeing it's the same person? And they're not giving an explanation anywhere in the script at all as to what Magda's power is to hide herself so that Maria can't see through it. Like what we hear in that conversation here between the 2 of them is she's saying to Elsa, I don't know what you are yet, but when I do know, I'm trying to figure it out, but when I do know, I will tell you, I will let you know what you are. So she hasn't worked out that it is Magda. She hasn't worked out it is the demon that visited her in her home a couple of episodes ago. And I'm just wondering I don't know how you would do it in the script. Like John Logan obviously is a much better writer than I could ever hope to be. I don't know how you do it in the script, but it feels like there should be something in there that we would hear the history of the demon Magda. You know, like in the original Penny Dreadful, when they had Mr. Lyle, the Egyptologist, come over and kind of read a little passage from history and go, this is what this demon does. This is the powers of this demon, and this is how we beat him, kind of thing. It feels like you need somebody, and Maria should be that character. Maria should be the person, because she's a worshipper of Santa Muerta and knows all about Santa Muerta. You'd expect her to have some conversation with one other character going, Magda may be manipulating everybody around her, because what she can do is, or she's known to inhabit humans to give them their guidance and do her will, or something like that. It feels like there's something that the audience is being asked not to question, why Maria can't see that this is the same person in front of her.
But I think we got an answer to that in the visitation of Magda to Maria at her grotto and shrine to Santa Muerta. Right. In that, she can feel her on the neck, smell something that's wrong. She does say to Raoul, that the Craft house is cursed. She knows there is something up. She probably believes it is the work of Magda. She mentioned to Magda in the grotto, I want to be a part of your games with your sister and leave my family out of it, kind of thing. So I think she knows that there's something evil at play here, because she is tuned into that spirituality, that supernatural side through Santa Muerta. And so she knows that Elsa is not who she is pretending to be. There's an evil aura coming from her, in that sense.
German witch.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So, in a sense that she knows that she's just nasty, but whether she's connected the dots to know that it's part of a grander plan, I don't think she would. Ultimately, in the scheme of things, she is Peter's housemate. She may see Rio, but I think increasingly it's that we see Magda in those forms, but actually they're taking different forms, and that must be the case because of Frank.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think she doesn't look like Magda at all. Right. But obviously within the show, it is Natalie Dormer doing a fantastic, amazing job of doing all these different portrayals of different forms of Magda. But I think to the people in the scene, I can imagine that they're being told as the direction, you don't recognize her as that. Yeah. She is as someone else. Yeah. She looks like Elsa, whoever Elsa may be, or like Frank.
Exactly. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I just wonder if there was something that they could have kind of exposed to the audience, why Maria is not seeing that face in front of her, just a line of dialogue somewhere. But you're right. It's such an interesting scene, and in an episode where so much great acting is happening. I think everybody gets a great moment in this
absolutely.
episode. I really do think that Adriana Briaza is like number one in this episode for me. It's the scenes that she has. I think she's just fantastic once again in this episode. I think there's some wonderful moments, starting with that moment with Elsa. It's so good. Speaking of all that, are you finished your main point?
Absolutely.
It's not like you can't talk for the rest of the episode, I promise. And you will obviously get to talk, because the other big moment that I'm going to choose for this episode is A Night at the Crimson Cat, because what a great way to bring the whole family together. We talked about that joyful scene earlier on in the season where we had Maria dancing with Tiago. I think it was in the first episode, actually, maybe even the second episode, where the two of them danced together in the streets. And it was a lovely family moment. So you know that Maria loves to dance. You know that she feels the family love between the two of them. So I really enjoyed that moment when she arrives home after having this argument with Elsa and meets Raoul and says to him, I need to blow the cobwebs off after that argument with that German witch. Can we go out tonight?
And everything that's gone on as well. She needs to treat herself. And I think, I thought that was really good. It felt actually so natural. And I really like that in this moment we have actually a bit of an explanation with Raoul as well. I was
going to say that, because finally we get Zombie Brother explaining a little bit why he's been a bit of a zombie for the last few episodes, and it feels like he knows he has a purpose, and that will hopefully come out in the next episode, what that purpose is.
Exactly. I thought that was really good. Let's face it, he got shot in the brain, and even though he got pulled back by Santa Muerta through Maria's prayers, at the end of the day, you can imagine him that he would be tired. That changes you, even getting back to normal. But I like the fact that he layers in that he feels different and he can't quite understand why or how or what that difference is, and that there is some kind of new purpose that he is there for, and that he can't put his finger on.
Yep.
In some ways, a lot of him zoning out and sitting there is probably him racking his brain to try and figure that out, as much as the recuperation from being shot in the brain.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because one of the nice continuity things in this, you see Raul coming out of hospital, he's still got the bandages on, and slowly but surely his wound on the top of his head is getting better, and that's so he has been convalescing as much as then. Now we understand he does feel different.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just to do with the bullet. But I'm hoping it has a massive supernatural shell case that is happening.
Well, I think there's only 2 weeks that have passed roughly since the beginning of the season, since Raul was in hospital. I think it's roughly 2, maybe 3 weeks that have gone on. So you're right. I like the continuity that he's getting a little bit better on that massive injury that he has to his head. But it's very important to note that Magda spoke to Raul and influenced him to take those shots on the police officers and kill the police officers that he did with the gun in that first episode. Santa Muerte was prayed to bring him back. And he specifically says in this episode, I feel different. I don't think there's anything that bad about that road, actually. So he was the leader of the Mexicans who were against the road going through their neighborhood. He was the leader of that group, basically. He was leading that charge. And now, 6-7 episodes on, or a couple of weeks later, he's basically saying, well, I'm actually not too sure whether that's that bad a thing. So he's not going to take up arms again to protect his area, potentially because of the influence of Santa Muerte effectively saying, you're back now, don't fall into the trap that Magda's laying for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she has intervened in the Vega family twice now, with saving Tiago from the fire when he was a kid, now with Raul, saving him and bringing him back. And it feels like her influence is actually within Raul now, saying, change your mind about this thing that was actually going to cause massive violence and massive race versus race war, because that's what Magda wants you to do. So that's what he's kind of feeling the pull of. So is it going to manifest as something bigger in episode 10? It absolutely should, because I feel like Raul's kind of taking a back seat, sitting there thinking what it is that he should be doing. So hopefully in episode 10, we all find out what it is that Magda's plan for him is. So, sorry, Santa Muerte's plan for him is. Lots of characters in this show. So, but try to work out what Santa Muerte's plan for him is, and hopefully we'll see that next episode. But I kind of like that it was at least addressed here in their conversation before they head off to the Crimson Cat and literally bump into Josephina while they're dancing. She's out there with her school friends for the evening, having the dance, not drinking though. Not drinking, Maria. I'm only here to dance, Mom. I love that she instantly calls her on it and just kind of says, "Don't lie to me. I know exactly what you're doing."
Absolutely, and even just the shock of the new hair color. But in the end, actually, that's not the issue. It's the amount of mascara and foundation that she's put on.
Exactly.
And I love Josefina's kind of rebuttal to that. It's like, I know, I was telling my friends to stop. Blaming it on her friends. I just thought that was really great. But I think those nuances of the interaction between a mother and daughter, and a mother and her sons, and the brothers the brother and sister, it's just so nicely observed. And I think that's in all of this building of, at least initially, you've got Maria and Raul at the Crimson Cat, and then they bump into Josefina, and then all of a sudden Mateo turns up with
cool.
Fly Rico and Rio and all this, and he's like,
the arrival of them, it really felt like something out of West Side Story. It was so cool, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the, it was another kind of beat in that crescendo up. And yet in between all of this, you have these really intimate, moments or just subtle nuances of, as I say, of all these interactions between a family, which is really good. And ultimately, I think is what, despite the bigger things at play here, is what pulls them back, which is really, really good, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I know myself and you are both from reasonably big families. I have a family of 7 and you're a family of 6. So kind of similar sizes to the Vega family. And I certainly remember when I was younger and all of us were much closer in age, I certainly remember some of our arguments getting to this level of...
Oh, absolutely.
Kind of, nobody can tell you more honestly what they hate about you than your brother or your sister or your mom sometimes.
Absolutely.
But Maria really does go for the jugular with everybody here about what she specifically isn't happy with. She's the argument between herself and Mateo is probably one of my favorite beats in that discussion, because Mateo has a really good point when she says to him, I'm disappointed in you going out and joining the Pachucos kind of thing. You need to be home with your family. You need to be taking care of them, show some pride. And he says to her, remember when he says to her first, Josefina went going off and joining the church. You hated that. You gave out about that. Raul becoming the union leader. You hated that. You gave out about that.
You thought he was going to turn into a Bolshevik.
Exactly, a bomber, Tiago going off and joining the police force. Originally, you gave out about that. And now those are all things that you should be proud of. You should also be proud of me because you taught me to be proud. And this is my version of being proud. I'm only doing what you
Exactly. And he says each one of, exactly. And I think each one of us has found our pride. Mm-hmm. Everyone found it. And me going out there, I'm growing up out there. I thought Mateo here was really good just to kind of neutralize Maria. Because actually, the thing that happened with Maria was she felt like a chemical reaction that she was going to explode at each moment of an arrival with one of the Vegas. Mm-hmm. Even just Molly being there, I thought she was going to explode at it. And it ended up being calm. And then eventually. No, but ultimately leading to the big explosion from Maria when she realizes after Tiago and Molly have arrived in who Molly is. Because
Molly is,
in her eyes, she's taken away her daughter Josefina and now she's with her, obviously her best son, or the one that all the other brothers and sisters think is the spoiled child of Tiago. Yeah. Like the whole Pinocchio thing coming from Raul was really, really nicely done. Dare I say it? I think if I was sat around a table with my brother and sisters, they would probably level that charge at me.
Definitely, you're
being the youngest.
Family,
But as I always said, in family warfare, being 10 years younger than everyone else, I can't be the physical. I have to be the crafty kid to make sure that that's my weapon.
Yeah. Use your tears to get what you want, John. Yeah. I love that description.
No, it sounds so awful.
No, I know it. Like, I'm sure my brothers, when they met you first, I'm sure they told you those kind of stories of, he could definitely just create a tear in his eye and it would fall down his cheek and just hold there long enough for mom to see it and then not blame him for something bad that he'd actually done, There's definitely tools that you use, and I love that that's the description that Raul gives of his younger brother, Tiago. I just really like that. Never leave your partner alone with your family for 5 minutes while you're going to the bar if that's the first time they've met, because your family have been waiting for that for a long time. All those stories in hand.
Yeah, it will all come straight to the surface. So I thought that was really, really good. Yeah. And ultimately, the big, effectively Maria losing it, and it kind of just like a shockwave going throughout the family. Because Mateo seeing Tiago as well coming back from the bar, trying to settle it down, but it's just not succeeding. And Mateo going after him, calling him mofo, all this kind of stuff. It's really antagonistic. It's really confrontational.
And throughout it all, you hear Raul in the background. He's the one that's calling for everybody just to shut up and sit down. Yeah. Shut up and sit down. Stay together as a family. Like, it's so vitriolic. The words that they're saying to each other is so insensitive. And then you're kind of thinking, this is a loud family in a live venue, a live music venue. Like, I was waiting for, like, what we'd have nowadays would be the record scratch where the DJ stops playing the music. You'd expect the band to stop playing. They are so loud as they all shout at each other. But I love that Tiago's the one that makes them all stop. He is the patriarch of the family since they lost their father. He's the one that's led the honest life, I suppose, in some senses. We know.
Well, Raul as well, I think, but obviously
yes.
he's been
did
shot.
murder quite a few cops at the beginning of the season. So everybody has their grey areas, always with Penny Dreadful. What we know as an audience, Tiago isn't the most upstanding member of the community either. He's also arrested somebody that didn't commit the crime that he arrested them for, effectively. So he's also not a person beyond reproach, but he seems like the patriarch of the family. He seems like the person that the rest of the family respect the words he says. And I love that his speech to the rest of them is about the fact that he never felt good enough. Even though everybody else in the family thinks Tiago thinks he's better than everybody else because of the path that he's chosen to travel, he's saying, everybody tells me I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough Mexican. I'm not a good enough police officer. I'm not a good enough white person. I'm not white enough to join their gang. I'm not Mexican enough to join your gang. I'm separate from everybody. And now everybody's giving me this pressure. And I love that he ends it with, I'm here with the woman I love and I deserve that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. It was spot on. It was really nicely played, and I like how that just got everyone's attention.
Yeah, great performance from Daniel.
Yeah, it was really good, and it felt absolutely right. You know, it felt like a proper family Barney, to be honest, a real argument.
You'd expect it around the dinner table. It's just one of those ones that I just was not expecting that level of fighting in a pub, and not have, the bouncers go up and go, could you just close it down a bit? People around you are dancing and having fun.
Yeah, I think the other good thing here as well was that you kind of have the big sigh after what's happened, and you see Maria jokingly talking about, and not one of my three sons became a priest, and you have Mateo. I really like this, just saying we have a priest in the family,
or maybe,
pointing to Josefina. I thought that was really nicely done, and that kind of respect, that idea that his sister can be the priest. It doesn't have to be a man. I thought it was just so well done. It feels so authentic for a family with brothers and sisters, and it feels authentic to John Logan's writing, that sense of equality. So it was really nicely done, I thought.
And you do feel that two of those siblings are the closest of all the siblings.
Yeah.
Josefina is the person that Mateo sought out to go and try and find solace in. Finding out that she was part of a religious order is instantly what backed him off and pushed him away. But you feel like the two of them, because of how close they are in age and because they both still lived at home at the time, you really do feel that their closeness. So I like that, as you say, he defends Josefina kind of, she's just as good as the boys. When Maria says, I have three sons and not one of them is a priest. That's an interesting note, isn't it? That maybe she's the priest. Is that something really important again? There is a religious war here going on between the two icons that are Santa Muerta and Magda, So is it really important that Josefina is the priest of the Vega family, that she's going to be standing between the two of them in that final battle, maybe? Something like that. I think we'd suspected that maybe Sister Molly would be involved in that final battle. We suspected, obviously, her influence on Josefina was going to mean something by the end of the series, and maybe Josefina is the one to stand in between the two of these warring factions to stop them from the fight in the final episode. Potentially that's something. But just to mention as well, Rio's participation in what's going on here, Magda's version of Rio during this episode, because I just thought it was interesting. She was really niggling at the family when Mateo joined them. The line, which is such an embarrassing thing to say in front of someone's mom, going, he's a man, ask me, I know for definite kind of thing. It's a real hang your head in shame and walk away from the table, love. It's a real kind of, it's a niggly thing to say to a brother, but the mother's right there. You don't want to tell her I had sex with your son the other night and he's great in bed. It just feels disrespectful to this family Vega. And it feels even more disrespectful when she calls Maria mama and she goes, I'm not your mama. Maybe you don't even have one, kind of thing. She feels disrespected by Rio kind of joining the Vega family table.
Absolutely. I mean, and that causes a great tension between Mateo and Maria. You really kind of get that in the same way as with Tiago and Fly Rico at the bar. When knowing that Fly Rico, Rio, and Mateo were there, and when Molly and Tiago come in, you're just going, how is this going to play out? This is a tinderbox that is about to be set on fire. And I thought it was really just so well handled. Just all to music as well. And I think what was great is the big makeup dance at the end where the family Vega are off out on the dance floor. They're all taking the partners. They're bringing Molly in as well. And
that's so cool, isn't it?
It's just this joyous, happy event where, Tiago has just put that line in the sand. It said, let's wipe that slate clean. I do like it when he goes into Mateo, he goes, I've always loved you. I do love you. Yeah. Let us talk sometime, but then it's intercut with the next worst thing of Lewis. And I love that it's to no sound here, that it's still the dancing music, that unbeknownst to all these people, the happiness is still going on, but somewhere in a part of LA is a despicable act that's about to happen to Diego, with Lewis being handcuffed and overpowered by all the LAPD officers as they're transferring Diego to San Quentin, and then they go and lynch him. And it's very, very powerful. I found where it's this joy of the Vega family kind of settling their differences and coming together in the Crimson Cat and dancing to this kid who's been made the fall guy by Lewis, who I think that's why, Nathan Lane's kind of look at trying to get them, pleading with them to stop, but there's no sound to it, and just the emotion that's coming across as they're lynching Diego, it is just so powerful. Really it's really great TV and drama and acting, and it has a purpose.
Absolutely.
So it's so good.
Yeah, it really is, and it's so frustrating for Lewis as well. The moment where they push him back, hang him up with the handcuffs in this van that's effectively purpose built for this thing, to transport people who can't get out of the binds that you put them in, effectively. So Lewis been handcuffed up there. They take his gun off him as well, just in case he tries to shoot them or tries to intervene in any way possible. And it's just a resigned moment when they close the door on Lewis's face and drive away from the now dead Diego. They basically do wait until he's dead before they move the truck away. So, am I right in saying that that's outside the Vega family, or very close to Maria's family home, where this takes place? I think it is.
I don't know. Yeah. It's certainly in the Mexican community. Yeah. I don't know. To me, it looked more like the area that Tiago and Lewis were in when they questioned Fly Rico's girlfriend.
Oh, right. Okay. Maybe.
Or sister. I can't remember who she was now. Yeah. When they were trying to find where they were after the death of Officer Riley. It just because where Maria and Maria's house is, and where she gets off at there's the bus stop, there's the bar, it's almost like it's this proto community center, the center to that area with the shops, the bar, the bus stop, and it seems like Maria's just off from that. But it's certainly in the community.
I think just as they drove away, I thought I saw the table from the first episode where they'd all eaten cake and celebrated Tiago during the police force.
But it's in the community. It's a message to the Mexican.
Absolutely. And again, given what's been going on the last few weeks in the US with these types of lynchings happening again in very public places in America, really shockingly and really sadly, this moment strikes really hard that this is being brought back to the Mexican community as a warning to them to not mess with the police, because this is what you get, is kind of what you're seeing, this abuse of the power of the LAPD in this moment, even though you have someone like Lewis who was trying to send this kid down for murders that he didn't commit. He was treating him fairly from that point onwards, but he can't do anything to stop what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in that moment, it was just, it's that topsy-turvy nature of it all, isn't it? Where you go, hang on a sec, these people are supposed to be upholding the law. This guy hasn't even had a trial, even though he's confessed and so on, and you're doing that. you're taking the law into your own hands, and your oath would be to uphold and protect the law and to protect the community, which you don't even, it's like a doctor taking a Hippocratic oath and then not doing the surgery or the diagnosis or whatever because they don't want to, or a firefighter taking their oath and not going in to put out the flames in a burning building. Yeah. And it's the same here. And that's the crazy thing. I just don't, it's difficult to comprehend is that is exactly what they shouldn't be doing. Well, exactly. And yet they're doing it. Yeah. And if that is a historical thing, I suppose, which it is, then absolutely. You see why this craziness permeates through generations of policing. And it moves from lynching to using airstrikes, like in Tulsa. It moves from that to, bullets. And there's the idea that if someone's jaywalking because they can't afford a car, that they should be stopped and searched in a way that is so overblown with weapons that it is beyond sort of comprehension. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But it's, again, this show once again has hit a note that couldn't have been planned when the show was written. Absolutely. That this was the time it was going to hit. But sadly, it's something that has repeated over time. We haven't learned from history. This is something that has continued in the US and continued in many other countries, sadly. And here we are again. It's very prescient, very shocking that it's hitting right now. And I was unsurprised, I think, that Showtime put out the warning that this episode would be a difficult watch, and would be disturbing for a lot of viewers. And it certainly was a disturbing moment at the end of the episode. But it's topical. It's great drama and acting, and we can't pretend these things don't happen as well. No, exactly, and it's hugely important. Yeah. And it's a phenomenally emotive drama that's happening here. And I think it's what's making Penny Dreadful City of Angels absolutely really, really good. As well, from the cast, the crew, the writers, all of that. It's just so well done. And as you say, it's just hitting those topical notes, which John Logan always intended it to do, but in the context of what's happening, as you say, then it's elevating that exposure that's being shown in these episodes of how people have in the past treated other people just simply because of things like the color of their skin or their preferences or whatever. Exactly. So, it feels ripped from the headlines, really, doesn't it? At times. I think that's it for the main points. There's definitely a note that I have about this that just didn't fit in anywhere. The moment when Molly arrives into the Crimson Cat, and we see Rio standing up at her little perch up at the top, watching out over everybody around her. There's a little moment where you see Mateo dancing with Josefina, and she looks angry. I mentioned earlier on in the episode about, is Magda losing her influence on the people that she's chosen to influence effectively? Are they people that she shouldn't have chosen? Should she have chosen someone else? I think it's a little bit similar to, we spoke about this before, John, when we were covering season 3 of Penny Dreadful, this idea that Dracula had of separating his victim from all of the people around them, all their support network and all their support system, and then turning them to the dark side, like he did with Eva Green's character in the original, season 3 of Penny Dreadful. That's what I feel Rio is doing with Mateo. She was consistently calling the Pachucos his new family. He doesn't need the old family, and it seems by the end of this episode, or at least that moment anyway, that as they're coming back together, it feels like Rio's really annoyed about that. She seems like she's seeing this family come back together that she thought she'd torn asunder or had been torn asunder. And then Molly and Tiago arrive, and she gets a really interesting look that I'm sure is going to be explained in the final episode. But I just had a little moment when I watched it going, is it Molly? Is it Molly's arrival that she's annoyed about, especially on the arm of Tiago? Does she know who Sister Molly is? Because again, that story is the one that hasn't really had much interplay between the Magda characters. Is it Sister Molly? Is it something that she's bringing to the table when we get to this final battle in episode 10? Or is it the fact that Tiago is under protection of Santa Muerta? He is the one member of the family that has been touched by Santa Muerta. He's supposed to be protected. Remember,
she was specifically told during that fire that killed his father, leave the kid alone, leave Tiago alone.
Yeah.
And Santa Muerta was asked, why does she care for him? Why does she care for any of them? Magda called that out. Why do you care for that child, kind of thing? And now she sees him walking into the club where all the rest of the family are. So I'm really intrigued about what that look meant right there.
Yeah.
Does that mean now that she knows Tiago is a member of this family, now that she has them all, now they're all back together, does that mean Rihanna has to back off from her control, or Magda overall has to now back off because Tiago's there? Is there some kind of key that he is to this end game, I suppose, that we just haven't seen yet? So I was just really intrigued. It was a really interesting moment. Go back and have a look at that moment in the episode. Just, it was an interesting little moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It really was, for sure.
John, anything else you want to talk about from the episode, or any notes?
Yeah, I've got 3 notes. First one is, I loved the sign behind Rio in the Crimson Cat, which said "No sleeping on the tables," which I thought was really interesting.
If you have to have a sign, it means it's happened a few times.
Exactly. So I thought that was a nice little sign there. Mm-hmm. And my other 2 notes relate to Townsend's conversation with his father, where he talks about the 3 people that have built LA. Obviously, there's Jerome Townsend there on the roads, which I couldn't find anything of, but William Mulholland, who I suppose I know through the namesake of Mulholland Drive, but he was an Irish-American civil engineer who was responsible for building the infrastructure to provide the water supply to LA and its growing demands as one of the largest cities in the US, which I thought was really good. A slightly sort of tragic end to his career when effectively he had just granted a safety inspection to the St. Francis Dam, and it failed 12 hours later. So yes, but yeah, brought the water, as Charlton Townsend mentioned. And the second one was Edward Doheny, who effectively was made famous and also has a major road in Beverly Hills named after him.
Oh, right.
He was made famous for discovering oil under a private residence, and his find sort of set off the big oil drilling spree and kind of oil wars. And an interesting thing that the Clampetts came first, then the swimming pools, and then the movie stars. That LA was built on oil, and the oil wealth that he then poured into the city.
The Clampetts, the Beverly Hillbillies, isn't it? The TV show that was based around the Clampetts coming from nothing and getting what's it called? Black gold? Is that?
Yeah, black gold.
That's it. So an interesting one there. Edward Doheny, by the name, you can tell. I think he was a first-generation American. His parents were both Irish, moved over from Ireland during the Great Famine, moved over to America, and Edward Doheny is the product. But interesting, two Irish Americans setting up LA. Quite an interesting past, because there's also been the discussion in here that, remember, LA was built on land that was originally part of Mexico. So interesting that effectively it was built on civil engineering, water, oil, and the road system created by Jerome Townsend. Very interesting that you note that both Mulholland and Doheny both have roads named after them in this city. We talked about it back when we were previewing the series of Penny Dreadful City of Angels, that John Logan basically based this entire storyline for the series over the idea of the road system in America. So interesting that all these characters are connected with the road system in
absolutely.
LA. So, interesting one. That's your 2 other notes.
That's they're my 3 notes, or notus de la mortis.
Excellent. I just wanted to mention the big song that's used in this episode. It's probably the most famous big band era kind of jazz tune. You can really see that this would have been kicking off in the clubs. It came out in 1936, I think, so pretty close to when the show is set. I did slightly complain, just a modest complaint, that if I went to a nightclub and I was going out dancing for a night and they played, even though this song is massive, if they played the same song twice in an hour while I was there, I'd know it's not the right club to go to. But I suppose you got a live band, they probably love this song and love playing the song, because it's a great song. Sing 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 has been used in so many different movies and TV shows and adverts and stuff. So it's an iconic classic. and definitely makes me want to dance when I watch it. So maybe they didn't really mind. They're there to dance anyway, so play the song twice. Sure, why not? You know. But I did like it. It's a pretty classic tune, so really good to see it played there with all of the Pachucos and all of the Vega family all dancing away. Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Derek, what did you think overall of the episode?
I think it's pretty evident here. This is my favourite episode of the season. What John Logan is known for with his Penny Dreadful series specifically is they build and build and build to a crescendo. And you mentioned it here, John. This episode itself is a crescendo. The music, how it's used, the intercutting with everything that's going on, and the massive build-up to get the Vega family effectively back together after they've all been kind of separated throughout the season was just magnificent. It was so well put together by the writer and director here, and all the cast are just leveled up, I think, in this episode. Everybody gets a moment. It feels like one of those ones where they got the script and went, oh, right, okay, I can't wait for episode 9 when everybody gets a speech, everybody gets a moment to show who their character is and why they are doing the things they're doing, what their motivation is, really. So wonderful, absolutely so well put together, and I'm delighted by this. You know, we're just one episode from the end, and this episode right here is standing as my favourite so far this season. So I'm really excited to see what happens in this final episode, how it's all going to tie together to close off season 1, or maybe the only season of City of Angels.
I really hope they come back for a second season.
I love these characters. I really want to see more of these characters and what's going to happen, but they could just as easily focus on something else that's going on in history or in LA or something else that's going on in the future. You know, maybe Magda might be knocked back this time and come back twice as hard next time. You know, it'll be 7 characters played by Natalie Dormer in the second season. maybe all the characters played by Natalie Dormer in the second season. It could be really intriguing, but yeah, really like this episode. John, what's your final thoughts on the episode?
Well, for me, I loved this episode. Like yourself, I think this is my favourite episode so far of the season. I give it 5 family craft yars out of 5. Just reference to the yars that everyone seemed to sort of chime in with back as the Craft family are going to the cinema to see Robin Hood.
It did sound like that, didn't it?
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether that's a joke, an in-family joke, particularly between Trevor and Tom, that every time their dad asks them a question, they say, yeah, just like
yeah, exactly. I thought that was really good. I think this was just a phenomenal episode for me. Mm-hmm. I loved just how it built, and I think the Crimson Cat was awesome. In some ways, I felt it was a slightly strange penultimate episode. I wasn't expecting to get the level of like gooey happiness of seeing the Vega family. I didn't think that was going to happen in this episode, or in fact at all. And I really enjoyed that. But I loved that, you know, the happiness of the Vega family was intercut with the darkness and tragedy of what was happening to Diego. Yeah. And I think that, just the undercurrents of darkness are there within this episode as well. But this moment where the Vega family are enjoying themselves, they're letting loose, they've wiped the slate clean. I just thought it was really good. And I think, otherwise, you know, you have all these different series of confrontations throughout this episode between Elsa and Maria, Goss and Lewis. You have between Townsend and his father, and then between all the members of the Vega family as they battle through their issues to ultimately a resolution from Tiago's speech. And I just thought everyone was phenomenal in this. I really, really enjoyed this. I thought, what a really clever episode, and was just great.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a little break there. We are recording a little bit earlier than we normally do. As I mentioned, Chris couldn't join us for this episode, but we're hoping we'll have a quick word from him on what he thought about the episode in our feedback section here.
Well, we're in feedback, and you'll never guess which court jester has joined us to sing away, to give a coin to the Witcher or whatever. It is our very own Christoph, who will be giving us feedback on episode 9, Sing, 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 which, please, Chris, don't sing.
Aw, yeah. Aw.
That's like the Craft kids. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about the Robin Hoods, and his merry men. Poor Friar Tuck every time.
And I didn't mean to call you a jester. I couldn't remember. Minstrel, that was the word I was looking for, was minstrel.
Bard. I prefer
Bard, that's it. In fact,
better.
yes,
Bring back the old
third
Dungeons
time
and Dragons.
is a charm.
Yes, and we did hear today that they are back filming season 2 of The Witcher. In August, it picks up production again. So, woohoo.
Good
We're
stuff.
back slightly on track for next year.
Yeah.
Let's see how it goes.
Well, Chris, what did you think of Penny Dreadful Sing 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 this episode?
It has me singing to a different tune.
Okay.
And it's singing to its own tune. So this does not feel like a penultimate episode. This feels like the prior to penultimate episode, third last episode of the season, because what I was expecting, and now I'm not saying this was bad, and I'm pleased, I very much enjoyed this episode, and I will put that out first. You expect in the penultimate for the chess piece, the board to be set, the pieces to align, and the battles that will have to happen in the final episode to happen or to be set up so that when you're going into the final episode, the final 40 minutes, the final hour, that it's breakneck speed, everything's go, 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 go. And I don't feel that they've done this. I feel we have the catalyst for this battle or for this war in the very final scenes. We have an almost coming together of the Vega family, so that reunion or that healing the rift, which we can expect to be tested again within the next hour. Yeah. But I don't know. I was expecting maybe that at least Mama Vega would start putting those chess pieces together and it would click in this final episode that she now knows who Magda is in the greater sense of the word. Like, she saw Rio and I was expecting her to go, well, you just did the same look or the same thing as, not Mrs. Craft, as Elsa, or soon to be Mrs. Craft, maybe. But I was expecting that, and then I was expecting potentially a bit more. I don't know. I was expecting like the chess pieces to be aligned. Yeah. But I feel this going into the next episode, if you have a bit more of those battle sections, then the final episode is the battle to win the war. And I'm more now wondering, and we've discussed it previously about when we were talking about the Craft family and some of those stories, are they seeding some of the plot lines for a season 2? Which is fine, but there's no guarantee. And that's always my problem with seeding potentially big story pop beats into, well, hey, we're going to talk about that in our next season. And then you're very much left like a bit of a Firefly situation, which is an amazing piece of television history where they seeded some amazing pieces that were never explored until it came out on the comic books and they explored them in the comic books. Yeah. So am I happy with how it went? Yeah. I like some of the, also, I'm going to take back some of my earlier statements about the dancing. The dance number in this episode were just they were spot on. Yeah. I think it was because it didn't feel, in my opinion, they didn't feel too elongated. They didn't like overstay their welcome. They focused in on the core characters and characters being the main bit, where they jumped between showing Mama Vega and Molly and then Raul and then Tiago, all of them. And you saw all of them enjoying it, and that jump with the Pachuco clan coming in. Yeah, that was so cool. Like that one scene at the bar, it just, again, and this is what I do enjoy about Penny Dreadful's writing style usually, which is, I was expecting a zig and they zagged. Right. And I was glad for it. It was, I was like, oh, we're going to see a bit of a punch up, No. Okay, that's actually cool. This is like hallowed ground for them. This is like, okay, when we're on church ground, or in this case, dancing ground, we do not fight. For today, we are not enemies. Tomorrow, we may be, but tonight we aren't. And that was just nice. And I think it showed a greater aspect of where Tiago and his brother might come, because if his brother is going to become the head of the Pachucos, as Rio wants, with Fly Rico, then potentially it is going to be brother v brother, but actually not what we were expecting, brother v brother. It's going to be like, it's actually not going to be a fight. It's going to come down to war of the words.
Yeah, maybe. I think definitely they have that push over the edge of the cliff that's going to happen when everybody finds out about Diego and what happened to him and his body being left hanging in their local community. I think that's going to be the big push, and Mateo's going to step right up with a bit of push from Rio to lead the Pachucos and everybody else in that community on their return to going back against the police and getting revenge for what happened. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But you're right, that whole the scene between all of the Vegas, we mentioned how everybody gets a moment from the lines they say and their speeches to each other and justifying why they do what they do. But also everybody gets their moment of dancing and enjoying themselves, after they've made up, and some beforehand, but everybody gets their big moment to kind of show why they're a family and why they're important to each other and to us as an audience. So some great things in there in the episode.
Is the final episode not going to be slightly bloated if they try and close everything? If we still think we have the whole rest of the Nazi situation. So we now have Rocket Boy in basically witness protection with the mob.
And Kurt on his trail very quickly. Yeah.
Kurt on his trail. We have the whole Townsend situation. We still have the whole Mama Molly, Mrs. Adelaide, and essentially how that's going to all turn out. We still don't know fully what's going on there. Yeah. Like, you've also then got the craft piece. We've got then Molly as a whole. Like, we still need to delve a bit further into that. We then have Zombie Bro. He's now starting to understand wants to know his purpose. So you've got a whole piece there. Yeah. And then the whole Pachucos versus the cops and the rest of the family versus cops. And then Tiago versus which side he's going to stand on when it comes down to potentially. You've got Lewis locked up in the back of the cop car. You've got then the actual just Germans or the Nazis in the developers, how that's Councilman Beck, how Councilwoman Beck. Like, that's a lot for 45 minutes, 53 minutes.
I think it is, but I think most of those plot lines will converge on, I presume, the consequences of Diego. So I think Craft, Raul, Tiago, Mateo, will all play out. And I think all around that, to be honest, and with Maria and all that, the main separate side of it that is partially connected and partially separate is the Nazis, which is playing out with Lewis. So I think actually there's two main areas that they'll focus on, a bit like I think with this episode, which it will be everything to do around the race riots, which draws in the police. It will draw in Tiago, Raul, Maria. I don't know about Josefina and Molly, but then I think with Kurt and her Goss and Lewis, that will be a separate thing. And how maybe Miss Adelaide connects in with the Nazis, all that will be as another separate. So I think actually a lot of the resolution, my kind of feeling is that a lot of the resolution is going to come from the fallout of Diego's lynching and the second thing, which I think structurally will make it much easier to deal with.
Yeah, and I think for the question about what's being left for season 2, or are they leaving storylines for season 2? I'd say you could say that, but the storylines they're leaving for season 2, I think, are the infestation of Nazis in LA, which is a much bigger story that couldn't be told in one season because it's not the central storyline of the show. And then the building of the motorway, when it eventually does get planning permission and goes through that, will form a backdrop for season 2, season 3, because we know the motorway exists. So we know the season couldn't end with them going, we're not going to have that motorway, let's move on, and that's the show over. Those two things, they are long-term plans, so they're likely to continue if there is a season 2. They would form the backdrop of the show, because you can't end Nazism in 1938 and does go on for another 5 or 6 years. And so those two elements will probably be left uncompleted, let's say, at the end of this season. But I think that's understandable things to leave. And your story here is about the Vega family, and will that story resolve by the end of the season with the intervention of Santa Muerte versus Magda at some point, I think.
And Townsend is going to connect in, because that's his way back to getting his freeway approved and not being recalled, will be this outburst of violence that is almost certain to happen following Diego being strung up by the LAPD.
Yeah, certainly.
Then they'll have to do a time jump potentially in season 2.
Maybe
to increase the infestation.
I thought you meant in the episode 10. I was like, what?
No, I meant in season 2.
But Doctor Who arrives and time jumps.
Yeah, I was actually watching Attack the Block last night for the first time in a long time, and I forgot that Jodie Whittaker was in it with John Boyega and a few others, and none other than Dr. Frankenstein's brother.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
He was in it, and I was looking at him going, no, he was in Penny Dreadful. And I was looking at IMDb going, why isn't he in Penny Dreadful?
Yeah.
It is him in Penny. And then it was at the bottom, he says, he has a
twin.
A sibling. And I was like, anywho, overall, I was really, really impressed with the episode. The writing was brilliant. The family dynamic scene where it's, I'm not, when Tiago does his speech and then is just laughed off to a degree with his mother. Or not laughed off, sorry. His mother laughs as a response that lightens everything. That was perfect, because that is very much a typical family thing where you're like, oh my god, this, blah, blah, and then everyone's like, oh yeah, he's right. All right, we're going to respond with a joke. So very happy with this episode. Actually, not what I expected. Cautiously optimistic for the next episode.
I think so far it's only a couple of days out, obviously, at this stage when we're recording, and it's definitely one of the highest rated episodes so far. But I think that was the one expectation that we had at the beginning of the series. We're on episode 9 now, and our expectation was the show would continue to build towards a resolution. And when you feel the show is quite slow at the beginning, exactly like the original Penny Dreadful, the first couple of episodes were setting the places, getting to know the characters, and some episodes did feel quite slow in their period drama. Dealing with 19th century London took time to set up all the characters and get everybody in motion. It was quite slow to begin with, and then built up to this big payoff towards the end of the season in the last 2 episodes of the season. And I think that's where we are with Penny Dreadful City of Angels. These last 2 or 3 episodes have been great, and this episode particularly for me was number 1. It was the best episode so far, because I really know these characters really well now, and I love seeing the Vega family together like they were in this episode. But there was so much other good, interesting stuff going on, and that painful ending with Diego being lynched is just, particularly at the moment, is a raw wound to be exposed by the TV show. Yeah.
Well, especially since as of filming, there is lynchings happening, which is terrible. But again, John Logan said he did want it to mirror the world of today.
Exactly. Thanks so much for that, Chris. Is there anything else you had about the episode itself before we go on to the
final
feedback?
One is just, it was good to see Brian Dennehy again.
It was. It
was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Didn't expect him. As soon as I saw him, went, oh, and then the title card in memory of.
Yeah.
So lovely. Still remember him from Cocoon. Always will remember him from Cocoon 1 and 2. Yeah. Some of the first films, I was like, oh, especially it's strangely a kid's film, but not a kid's film. It's an adult film, but it's marketed and shown for kids. So loved it. It was great to see him. That was it.
Actually, the 80s were a very weird time for that, weren't they?
Yeah.
One other one that I forgot to go, I think I said it to John as we walked out of the podcast room and went, Why did I do that? Why did I not mention it on the podcast we have about Penny Dreadful? Huge compliments for the cinematographer and direction of that one scene where Tiago and Molly are walking to the Crimson Cat. The population in that scene, the amount of extras in that scene in their period dress and how it was filmed really felt LA being really vibrant in that one scene.
Definitely.
You know, the last time they went to the Crimson Cat, it felt like it was, 2:00 in the morning and they were going in really late to go to this kind of party club, this after hours party club. This felt like a really vibrant Saturday night in LA. It looked like a really exciting set. Well, actually, that was kind of my point. It didn't feel like a set. It felt like something straight out of the 1930s where everybody's going out in their big night out at the end of the week, exactly the way it should have been set up. But that I think was one of my favorite filmed scenes from the season. I think the cinematography was great and the direction of how it worked was really good. Really enjoyed that. So just forgot to say it on our first recording. So I thought I'd say it now. Let's get on to some feedback from our awesome Dreadfuls, our awesome fellow Penny faithfuls. John, do you want to take the first one, our email from Susan in Canada?
Yeah, we got some feedback through. Remember, feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Just send us your thoughts there by either written or you can send an MP3 of a voicemail. And yeah, first up is Susan from Canada. She says, "Hi guys, just want to drop you a note to say how much I enjoy listening to your podcast for Penny Dreadful's City of Angels. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to find a quality podcast for the show since there sadly seems to be a lot less people watching compared to the original series. So imagine my excitement when I found the Dreadful podcast. It's great to hear your wonderful and thoughtful discussions every week."
Oh, thanks, Susan.
Yeah, thanks, Susan.
Well, Susan, when you do find the excellent podcast, do let us know so we can listen to it too. And try and
now,
some of the bits.
Chris, don't undersell yourself. Yeah, thanks so much, Susan. She continues, "Some of my favourite scenes this season take place in the Crimson Cat, and this week is no different. The music and the dancing always get me, even if they often are shown together with dark and violent imagery. Speaking of the music, would you gentlemen know the name of the song played when Josefina was dancing with Rico? It starts around 32 minutes, right after Mateo makes up with his mum for the night. I've been searching for it everywhere, but none of the usual music finding apps was able to give me an answer. Guys, do you know? Because I know I don't."
I went back and looked at the scene and went and checked because the episode's called Sing Sing Sing. It's based around the song that was used twice in the episode, the big band tune, most well-known tune, and it's the only different song that's in the club. I think they play that tune twice, and this other song that Josefina dances with Fly Rico is a different tune to that. And I was going, sugar, it's not that easy, unfortunately. It does take a few days for some of the websites that I use to update with the tracks that are in episodes. The one I use is called Tune Find. Usually about 2 or 3 days after the episode comes out, they populate the name of the song. What I think has actually happened is that this may be original score from John Paisano, because I definitely don't recognize the tune they're dancing to. So this may be something that I might not know until the soundtrack comes out, because John Paisano does all of the incidental music and all of the music for the show. So this may be a piece that he created. I know the last time the Pachucos danced in the Crimson Cat, that was an original creation for the show, specifically for that dance sequence done by John Paisano. So perhaps it'll be on the soundtrack when it comes out. But unfortunately, I don't know the name of the tune, and I'll check back in the next couple of days.
Yeah. Good stuff. Finally, Susan says, "I can't believe there's only one episode left in the season. I do have to confess that I am a little disappointed with Santa Muerta and how little she actually did in this season. I know her whole thing is that she doesn't interfere with the living, but it honestly makes her feel pretty inconsequential as a result. Maybe she'll do something to surprise us in the finale. Anyways, I can't wait to listen to your discussion of this week's episode. Keep up the good work. Cheers, Susan from Canada." Thanks so much, Susan, for all the thoughts there. I kind of agree with you. I would have liked to have seen Santa Muerta a bit more, because every time she has come in, particularly with Maria, I've just really liked the dynamic, because Maria really does not take any crap from anyone, including sort of semi-religious deities and so on. And I think it would have been nice to have seen a little more of her, and I think sort of Magda in her dark leather dress. I think, but I think that's just me. I kind of would like to have seen a little bit more supernatural. Like, I've really enjoyed the stuff around Frank and with Maria in her shrine and grotto. I would have liked a little bit more of a permeation of that. You know, like we've kind of talked about whether Molly is somehow sort of allowing spirits to move through her, and maybe seeing something in the temple, that kind of stuff, would have been really good. But, I do wonder whether Santa Muerta is gonna, play her hand, so to speak, in this finale.
Yeah. I think it's probably the headdress, isn't it? She can't really run down the street with the way the headdress is, if they fall off, which she can't have happen because that's her costume. So, I know what you mean. I kind of feel like, as I think we mentioned this already, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I think the one thing the show has kind of been missing is a little bit of the rules around who Magda is and who Santa Muerta is. We haven't really heard anything other than Maria say, you pray to Santa Muerta to get the things you want. And then we've heard her say she doesn't interfere in the lives of people. But having a character like we had Mr. Lyle back in the original Penny Dreadful, who gave you the rules of who the vampires were, and gave you the rules of who Dracula was, and gave you the rules of the demons, you know.
Yeah, and the stories behind it, the kind of context of it, because I would have loved to have seen a bit of that with all of kind of Rio's stuff about the ancient Aztec gods, you know, the royal kings. I think that, you know, there's so much around that. Even just the idea of the sacrifices that were done to kind of stave off the end of the world, you know, of living people.
That's true.
I think that would have been really interesting as well.
And of course, I totally accept that most people wouldn't want to sit around for an episode of somebody reading out of a book and going, this is all the details you need to know for the show. I get it, but maybe that's something that might have helped contextualize the character a bit more for how she would be in the show, because I think certainly putting out posters for the show with just her visage on the front of those posters, everybody had the expectation they were coming in to see this big supernatural showdown show, which it certainly hasn't been in the end. The supernatural has been ever present, without a doubt, but we haven't had fisticuffs between the two demons yet. So, so I don't expect that to happen next episode either, but I certainly expect, Santa Muerta and Magda to appear on screen next episode, to close out the series.
And then she gets her headdress stuck in, like, power lines or something. It's just going to be like, oh no, have to walk under here.
I hope not.
Weird. She just like walks in and bends over.
That's certainly an electrical conductor, isn't it? Thanks so much for that, Susan. Chris, do you want to give us the other piece of feedback that we have?
Sure. Over on Twitter, where you can leave us feedback at TV Pod Industries. Will B said, amazing episode, best one yet. The parallels to the current state of the US just goes to show that John Logan knows how plagued we still are by bigotry and hate. Mm-hmm. Also loved the family reunion and line of the episode, tomorrow I'm not off duty. Mm-hmm. Tiago talking to Fly Rico. Yep, talked about that scene. Yeah. Loved it. Yeah, John Logan, I think is just a bit, he's been channeling so much witchcraft and supernatural over his years writing, about Penny Dreadful, that he's become a bit of a witch and a prognosticator and a bit of a Nostradamus himself. Who knew?
I don't think it would take Nostradamus to predict what's happening, sadly.
Sadly not.
I think anybody who, you know, had a good vision of what was actually going on, would have unfortunately been able to predict where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thanks, Will. That I also loved the family reunion. I think that kind of lightness and happiness, even though they had a massive stonking argument, and even though the final dance between all the different family members and the new girlfriend was kind of intercut with that harrowing scene of Lewis being jumped and Tiago being lynched by the police. I think the family reunion, all of that in The Crimson Cat was just phenomenally done. Yeah, really loved it.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Will. Final piece of feedback is our voicemail from the wonderful friend of the show, Steve Brown.
Hey guys, it's Steve, and wow, what a great episode, this second to last episode here of Penny Dreadful. Really, really good. Let me start out by saying it was so amazing to see Brian Dennehy. Gosh, I didn't know I was going to get welled up by that. But it was really just, I don't think I've ever seen anything that I've really not liked him in, from First Blood and FX and, just so many things that I just flipped through his IMDb real quick, and I haven't even come close to seeing everything he's done. So it was amazing to see him again, and sad at the same time. But that scene with him and his son, it was just really, it was heartbreaking to see how he treated him. I absolutely loved seeing the Vega family coming back together, and Tiago standing up there for Molly and telling them that he loves her, and then they all sit down and there's kind of a reconciliation, and then that whole scene there at the end with them having fun and dancing, and at the same time Michner's struggling in the back of that police van as he watches Diego being lynched by the other police officers, which I was suspicious of. You know, as soon as they came out of the police station, there were so many cops with him. I was like, why is there so many to take one guy to the train station? And of course we figure out there as soon as they grab him and lock him to the car, the van there, that we know what's about to happen. And so very, very sad, but it's definitely a great setup for the final episode as we see everybody kind of, or at least the Vega family, having a good time, the Craft family out having their little their time going to the movies. But we know as Rio surveys the Vega family, and we know that something big is coming. So, can't wait to hear what you guys thought. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much for your feedback, Steve. Really good to hear your voicemail as always, but I know Steve is going to be away for the finale, so he's not going to get a piece of voicemail in time for our recording for the finale. But remember, we do have our wrap-up episode after our 500th episode, where you can send in feedback on the whole series. I know Steve's going to send in, hopefully, a voicemail for that. Start of July, I think we're doing that one. So hopefully you'll get in time for that.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Steve, for the feedback. Yeah. I mean, seeing Brian Dennehy was great. And just that whole scene, you know, again, it was another one of those confrontation scenes that I just loved from this episode between Townsend Jr. and Senior, was just phenomenal.
Yeah, really, really good.
Yes, thanks, Steve. I agree with you on Brian Dennehy. I already brought it up. Just remembered there was the one that actually introduced me to him before Cocoon was FX.
Oh, yes.
Murder by Illusion, and FX2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great for its time because the whole premise was using like FX to essentially catch killers or big serial killers, and yeah, it was cheesy as hell, but my God, it gave me a love of, it really did give me a great love of the actual, what goes into making a film. Mm-hmm. And then you had Brian Brown in there as well.
That's right.
As the other lead cast, and it was just,
I haven't seen that film since definitely early 90s. At some point, I think we owned it on video back in the day and watched it reasonably regularly, because it was a lot of fun. Definitely. Yeah, sadly missed Brian Dennehy. But it was great to see him in this final performance, even though he did play a bit of an a-hole with his son. Totally get that, Steve. It was a difficult scene, but a great actor can pull that kind of stuff off as well. Good catch on the cops, by the way, as well, Steve. We didn't have an indication when that amount of cops, led by the evil detective Frank Murphy, were lining up. We didn't have any indication that's they're intending to do. I just assumed they just needed that amount of cops because this is a high profile case. So I really didn't expect that that's what was going to happen. So good catch that you had some kind of premonition of what was going to happen to poor Diego. Thanks so much, everybody, once again for your feedback. Thanks, Chris, for jumping in and joining us for feedback. A little bit of fun talking with you about the episode. Sorry you couldn't join us for the full thing, but I know you're going to be back for the finale discussion next week as well.
Yep, can't wait to be involved for the next one, and I will be there 100%. Mm-hmm. But gentlemen, it's about time we go back in time. We go back to a time where I was not here. We go back to the Future? No, we go Back to the Past, much like Back to the Future Part 3. It's going to be, it's not the best.
It's a time jump.
It is. It's a time warp, if you will. It's almost like a step to the left.
And a step to the right.
Put your hands on your hip.
And bring your knees in tight.
Yeah.
There you go. Gentlemen, back to you for the pub quiz.
I think we've put in that feedback piece from Chris there. But John, do you want to take us on to our final section of the episode, our Penny Dreadful pub quiz?
Yes, it is the Penny Dreadful pub quiz. Let us all head down to the Crimson Cat for a tequila-fueled knees up. We'll laugh, cry, and most importantly, dance the night away for this week's pub quiz.
Excellent. It's the place to be, it seems.
It really is. Remember, send in your answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Keep those coming in. If anyone hasn't, please go to our website. You can check out all the questions that we have had for this series of Penny Dreadful Cities of Angels. And please send in the answers. There are another episode to go on Penny Dreadful City of Angels. We will then be having our 500th episode where we will be celebrating just all the TV series that we have covered, along with a fantastical pub quiz as well.
Oh yeah, better get writing, John.
Absolutely. And then we will do our roundup episode of Penny Dreadful City of Angels, where we will announce the winner of the Penny Dreadful pub quiz. So please, keep those answers rolling in. So with that, the question for episode 9, Sing Sing Sing, is what game does Dottie teach Brian Koenig to play? Yes, what game does Dottie teach Brian Koenig to play?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yes, please send in the answers through the email. Yeah.
You see it on screen. You see them playing it, and just so you know where the name is, in case you don't recognize, she does say it on a phone call in the episode. So she does mention the name of this game. So
look at you giving all these tips away.
I want to give some tips. I want people to get the answers right, so we have a bunch of people able to get those Penny Dreadful City of Angels goodies, because they're pretty cool.
Yeah,
the stuff that we've seen and the stuff that we're going to choose to send out to the person who gets the most answers right is pretty cool. John mentioned there that the cutoff point for the final answers for the quiz is before our wrap-up episode. Doesn't have to be in within 2 days like usual for the final episode. So you can get them into us by about the 6th of July, I think, is probably when we're recording our final episode, this wrap-up episode. So you can get them in about then, 4th or 5th of July at least. We should be able to include your answers in our Penny Dreadful pub quiz. We want to get as much of it as possible.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us as always. Please stay subscribed to the podcast. Share the love by sharing the podcast over on any good or evil podcast catcher of your choice. You can rate us, leave a review. We love the support from the community. You can also subscribe to us over on our Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. Any donation there is much appreciated and thanked for helping us to maintain the different aspects of the podcast. Your support in whatever form received is really, really appreciated here by me, Derek, and Chris for sure.
Absolutely. And you'll get our Captain America Winter Soldier podcast. I think it's about 2.5 hours, 3 hours of us discussing one of our favourite movies.
And there's the whole Penny Dreadful, the original 3 seasons over there as well. And we will be coming back with some additional podcasts to the Patreon as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us. One other thing that you can do if you want to support us, you can go over to British Podcast Awards/vote, pop in our name, TV Podcast Industries, and it'll pop up with the ability to vote for us in the British Podcast Awards. It's just interesting that we're able to get into those. So I'm delighted, and thank you so much to all the people that have voted so far. I've seen a couple of people over on Twitter sharing their votes with us, showing that they have given us a bit of support, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's really nice. Thank you.
Even if we don't get past all the 7,000 BBC radio shows turned into podcasts as they've been doing, even if you don't get past them, it's lovely that you've been supporting us over there. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah.
We will be back next week with the finale of Penny Dreadful City of Angels, the final episode. Guess what it's called? Day of the Dead. Dia de los Muertos is happening. Should this episode come out on the 1st of November? Shouldn't that be like aimed for them?
Is it
31st of October is Halloween, and then I think Day of the Dead is the 1st of November.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. So maybe it was aimed for, something that would come out later on in the year, but great to have it during the summer when nothing else is on television, nothing new is on TV at the moment. So great to have it going on right now. Well, that episode will come out after the episode airs on the 28th of June. Should have the episode out as usual on Tuesdays every week as we get to the end of our big show for the start of the summer.
Absolutely.
And also as we get to the end of our Irish lockdown for COVID, we should be able to travel from, I think, the 29th of June. So the day after the episode airs, we should be able to travel out of Dublin, John. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't wait.
Great stuff.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time.
Yeah, as always, fellow Dreadfuls and Penny Faithful, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Can't wait to speak with you next time. And just remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep dancing. But no sleeping on the tables.
And no singing, Chris.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.